Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Kashif Kamran and today I am discussing with you the exam tips for audit and assurance paper. And these exam tips are for exams in June 2023. Now, obviously, for any exam, the first and the foremost important tip is the time management because completing a 100% paper is very, very important. Now, in terms of the time management for the AA paper, where you have 195 minutes, that is the total exam time. Section A should take 58 minutes. You can see the blue bar. And then the section B should take 137 minutes. You can see the red bar. Now, this is the overall time management for the AA paper. 137 minutes for section B and 58 minutes for section A. Now, we know there are lots of questions in section B and again, lots of questions in section A, and you need to bifurcate that 58 minutes and 137 minutes, which I will be guiding you shortly. But ensuring you give a reasonable time to each section to complete it is very, very important. Now, just breaking that time for section A, where we had 58 minutes. And in terms of 58 minutes, if we look at the section A, and in section A, we have 3 OT cases. Now, each OT case will get 19 minutes or psychologically 20 minutes. And in that time, you have a very reasonable time to go over the short case study you have with every OT case, followed by 5 OT questions. Now, we know each OT case first give you a scenario, followed by 5 OT questions. And how much time you have for that? 19 minutes. Now, even for example, in like 5 minutes of the 19 minutes, you read through the scenario and you understand what exactly is happening in the scenario before you get to the OT questions and start taking the right answer. If the 5 minutes are taken off from 19 minutes, you're still left with 14 minutes. And how many OT questions you have to do? 5. Psychologically, you have around 3 minutes per OT question to read, look at the options, and choose the best one. You're not in a hurry, right? I've seen a lot of time the student are in hurry in the section A just to tick any answer as right, or they get into a panic mode and they spoil the section A of the paper. Remember, you have good enough time for reading every OT case, then reading every OT question and choosing the right answer. I just demonstrated that even if you take 5 minutes for reading and planning out of 19, you're left with 14. Then you go down reading each question, understand it, look at the options, try to choose the best one. If you get confused, read it again. Probably you will get to the right answer, or the chances of getting the right answer will increase if you spend a reasonable time on every OT question. So that is the time management you have for section A. A lot of time, the student tries just to wrap up the section A within just like 30 minutes. You have 58 minutes of your exam time on section A. And in that 58 minutes, you have 3 OT cases. Every OT case psychologically gets roughly 19 minutes each. Now, moving on and just taking a quick overview of the section A itself. Now, we know section A is 30% of the paper. And that is very, very important in terms of your success. Now, you have 58 minutes. You need to invest that 58 minutes in the section A, and you need to read the scenarios very carefully. You need to read the questions very carefully. You need to choose the right answer. Even if you get confused, reread it again. There are fairer chances you will get the right answer. Each OT case with 5 questions should be given 19 minutes. So you have plenty of time. Don't be in a hurry, which is the problem with the student. They're in so rush. I've talked to so many previous AA students. They say, we just tried wrapping up the section in just like 30, 35 minutes. For what? Is that 30, 35 minutes giving you a guarantee that you're scoring 30 out of 30 or at least 25 out of 30? You should aim for very high marks in section A because it's an easiest section. You just need to understand the question, and there are fair chances you will take the right answer. So try to ensure you take the higher bracket of marks from 30. So choose the right answer carefully, right? Practice recent attempts on Section A. Go to the practice platform, see the exam questions on practice platform. Wherever you find the recent questions on Section A published by ACCA, do them, including the June 23 mock exam published by ACCA on the practice platform has a Section A as well. And the examiner reports, if you look at the recent examiner reports for 2021 and 2022, in the examiner reports, examiner do give you a certain element of Section A, and that is an opportunity for you that you download an examiner report and do the Section A from the examiner report. Examiner will give you the OT question, the OT case, and then will give you the right answer as well and the reason for the right answer. So you can solve the OT questions from even within the examiner reports, but you need to be good on Section A, and you need to put in the right time over Section A in the exam, which is 58 minutes. Now, moving on towards the more critical section of the AA paper, which is to look into the Section B of the paper. Now, we know the Section B has 137 minutes, and there are 3 questions in Section B. One is of 30 marks, one is of 20, and one is of 20 again. And these are constructed response question where you need to read the case. There will be multiple requirements, ABC, for example, or ABCD, and you need to solve them. Now, question 1 has a total time of 59 minutes. You can see the blue area, right? The blue area is the time you have the total time, right? Then the question 2 and question 3 has 39 minutes in total. This is the total time. Now, that blue bar is telling you the total time. Then, in that total time of 59 minutes, which you have for question 1, you can see the orange bar, that is reading and planning time. In that 59 minutes, you have 15 minutes of reading and planning and understanding the question, the requirements, what the questions are asking you, how many questions are knowledge-based, how many questions are connected with the case study. Now, once you do a very good planning and understanding, you have a fair chance of putting a quality answer. And for that, you have 44 minutes. You can see the red bar on the top, 44 minutes. So you have 44 minutes of reading, 44 minutes of the writing time, and 15 minutes of reading and planning time. And the total time is 59 minutes. Same goes with question 2 and 3, where you have a total time of 39, out of which you can see the orange bar, which is 10 minutes of the reading and planning time, and again, 29 minutes of writing time for each of the question 2 and question 3. So you need to carefully put time on each question. Reading and planning is the right investment, which will bring the right returns for you. But if you are not doing reading and planning, you are not producing a quality answer, because if you read, if you plan, if you understand the requirement, you have a greater chance of putting things in a right manner and closing the gap with your marker and closing the gap with examiner expectations. So this is the overall time management you have for Section B in terms of total time, the reading and planning time, and then the writing time. You can see the blue, orange, and red. Now, just let's take an overview of what's exactly inside the Section B. Now, when you look at the Section B of the AA exams, it's 70% of the total paper. 3 constructed response question with 1 worth 30 marks and 2 of them worth 20 marks each. Focus on areas like internal controls, substantive procedures, audit risk and responses, and audit report. We know these are frequently asked questions. If you have attempted last 5 or last 6 exam sittings of AA, you must have seen that you do find a very monotonous looking Section B of the AA exam. You do get sizable marks on internal controls. You do get sizable marks on audit risk and responses, substantive procedures, and audit report. And this has been the case if you see the last 6, 7 recent attempts of the paper. So you're very sure what is likely in section B. You're very sure that you will get a question around internal controls, you will get a question around substantive procedure, around reporting, and again, yes, audit risk and responses. But again, you have 70 marks, so not all the 70 marks will be spent on this. Even in the mock exam, the June 23 mock exam, roughly 50 marks were allocated to these 4 topics out of 70. Yes, the remaining 15 to 20 marks is put on knowledge perspective, examiner testing knowledge around the syllabus areas, or knowledge around internal controls, or knowledge around planning, or knowledge around other areas of AA. For example, the knowledge testing includes areas like outsourcing and how outsourcing impact the audit process, using the work of an expert, using the work of an internal auditor, matters to be included in audit strategy, what are benefits of audit planning, or what are preconditions of audit, or what are terms and conditions of audit engagement letter. We have seen such questions in past paper. So if you have spent time on last 6, 7 attempts, you can identify what sort of knowledge questions are put into section B, where the major chunk is from risk, internal control, procedures, and report. But there is a certain 15 to 20 marks which comes out of knowledge, and a fair practice of past papers must have given you a list of topics which are frequently repeated in terms of knowledge in the section B of the paper. Attempt recent 5 exam settings to be good at section B with 1 week remaining for exams. Try just to be on the recent 5 exam settings, try just to brush over them. There is a lot of repetition. So if you have done a fair practice, you may be lucky to get a same question repeated in terms of the requirements, in terms of the structure. The scenario will change, scenario will alter, the scenario will modify. We do believe that even in scenarios, some examples or some situation remains the same, but there is a slight modification to the scenario. But the requirement, the way the question is put in, remains the same, or the topics remains the same. Review 3 latest examiner reports to evaluate examiner feedback for section B particularly. Read through the 3 latest examiner reports available on the ACCA website. And I think the 3 latest are for 2022. Read through them. See what is the examiner telling you about what the student do wrong in a question on internal control, what the student do wrong in a question on audit risk, what student do wrong when they're writing the responses to audit risk, what student do wrong when they're writing a substantive procedure, or what the student do wrong when a question is asking for impact on the audit opinion. You can learn from those weaknesses. You can learn from those examiner concerns rather than repeating the same in your real exam. So that is very, very important. So this is the overview of section B, a very critical section, which definitely contributes significantly in your success in the AA paper. And I believe that students should aim for scoring something in like 45, minimum 45 out of the 70 marks in the section B to pass this AA exam. And with so much repetition, with so much things being static in section B, you should do an excellent task in section B in your real exam. Okay, now just a quick overview of things which is in section B. We know internal control is a mainstay area of section B. And if you've seen past papers, at times examiner asks you a question where you need to identify the deficiencies or weaknesses in the internal control, and you need to give recommendations. At times the examiner asks you weakness, recommendation, and test of control. So that's like 3 things in one question. At times examiner asks you the key control and the test of control. At times the examiner asks you identify and explain the direct control and the test of control. So you must have seen that variety in terms of internal controls in past paper. So you should be clear on explaining the key controls, explaining the direct controls, identifying the deficiencies, putting in the recommendations, and then putting a test of control. You should be strong if you've practiced the last 5, 6 attempts. And that is what I was telling you, to look into the examiner reports. That is very, very important to see what sort of issues the student do when they're writing key controls or direct controls or test of controls. So just going over the last 3 examiner reports in this 7 days you have before exam would be great. Okay, the next topic then in the section B is audit risk and responses. At times, examiner says identify and explain 6 audit risk. At times, examiner says 7. At times, says 5, 6, 7. That's been the most common ground and a favorite question of examiner. You know, the risk, when you read the scenario for audit risk, the risk around accounting issues, you will find lots of risk moving around intangible assets or development cost, research, property, plant and equipment, depreciation, bad debts, etc. Risk around accounting issues, risk around wrong accounting treatment, because the examiner is trying to test your accounting knowledge, which you have brought forward from your FR paper. We know that the knowledge coming from FR paper in terms of accounting knowledge really helps you in the F8 paper, because you can easily pick up the wrong accounting treatment, or you can easily identify what is wrong in the treatment or what may go wrong in the treatment, and you can easily pick in the risk. Now, we know examiner favorite standards are provisions and contingent liabilities or contingent assets. Examiner favorite area is property, plant and equipment, the useful life, the depreciation, events after the balance sheet date, adjusting, non-adjusting, issues around intangible assets, research and development cost. These are quite favorite areas which do strike the F8 paper, even revenue recognition. So you should, if you have done a recent practice of the last few exam settings, you should be good into it. Control related issues in the case company does not have an internal audit department, or some issues relating to internal audit department, or some issues relating to weak internal controls in the scenario could be present because you're doing a question on audit risk. Not necessarily every time this happens, but sometimes you do get some paragraph on internal controls of the company as well. There could be some factors in the scenario about detection risk, like first year audit, and you're doing the first year audit, so you have to relate it with high detection risk. You need to justify why there is a high detection risk in first year audit, because again, it's a question on audit risk. So there is a chance there might be a certain statement in the scenario which can give rise to detection risk as well. Stating clearly what is the risk. A lot of time the student identify the risk very well, but when it gets down to explaining what is the risk, they struggle. There could be a risk. For example, you say, this could result in wrong classification. Now, this is the statement of risk. This could result in early recognition of revenue. This is the risk statement. Or this could result in an inappropriate presentation of an item in the financial statement. Or this could result in an inappropriate valuation of inventory. Now, see, this is the risk statement, trying to find the risk. Now, we know the risk can be something wrongly recorded, wrongly recognized, wrongly valued, wrongly presented, wrongly disclosed. You're all accountants, right? This is what the accounting standards tell us. Now, if something is wrong, if there is a risk and you've identified this is inappropriately recorded or inappropriately disclosed or not recognized, or not valued, then what is the impact on the financial statement? Now, you need to be very clear writing the impact. Examiner is very unhappy with students in terms of how they write impact. Most of the time, the students write the financial statements could be misstated, full stop. If you're talking about revenue and you're talking about that revenue is early recorded or is early recognized, even when the performance obligation is not met, this is a risk. Thus, the revenue could be overstated because you're talking about a particular account balance. Now you have to say which account balance is overstated. If you're talking about property, plant and equipment, and you think that certain items of revenue nature has been capitalized, so that is a wrong classification. And because of the wrong classification, the property, plant and equipment is overstated. You cannot say financial statements are misstated because you are identifying a certain account balance, number one. Yes, if the company does not have an internal audit department, now I cannot identify account balance. Now I have to say that, yes, the company does not have an internal audit department. So that means the monitoring of the controls are weak, which increase the chances of material misstatements in financial statements. And thus the financial statements could be misstated. That is very rare. But if you are working on an account balance like development cost or like research expense, or you're working on property, plant and equipment, or you're working on revenue, or you're working on receivable, then you need to hit that specific area in terms of under and overstatement. So stating clearly what is the risk and what is the impact. Now, if you're writing a risk answer which does not have a risk and an impact, you're getting 0. And that happens with student because they're writing something, but that does not have a risk and impact at all. So please ensure you improve upon the quality of your risk answer, at least having a risk statement and an impact statement. Then the last thing is audit response. When examiner tells us that a lot of time the student write recommendations to management in audit response. Audit response is an action which the auditor will take to mitigate the risk identified. If there is a risk of overstatement in revenue, what step will auditor take? Will he increase his sample size? Will he perform more substantive procedures on revenue? This is relatable to you. This is relatable to the auditor. You cannot give recommendations to the management. You cannot write a management response here. You need to write an auditor response here. And you know, the auditor response has to start with an action. Review something, discuss something, recalculate something, or yes, even increasing the sample size. That is the response of the auditor. Or if you believe there is a risk of management bias, management bonuses are linked with company's performance. And there is a chance that company performance as a whole can be manipulated and financial statements could be misstated for that reason. So when we go to the audit, my response will be, I need to be more skeptical around areas of income and expenses because management bonus is linked with it. I need to increase my sample size around income and expenses because I believe there is a chance of income being overstated and expense being understated. So what step will the auditor take? What action will the auditor take to address the risk, to confirm whether the risk is true or to confirm whether the risk is false? Because you identified the risk at the planning stage, right? So your response will confirm whether the risk actually exists or it was just the doubt of the auditor. So you are confirming that through your responses. So you need to be very sound on this topic. Easy topic. You have a scoring opportunity here, but a lot of times students just spoil this topic by writing illogical responses or not just identifying the risk and impact when they're writing the answer on audit risk. So this is a core area, right, where you should be very good at. The next core area is substantive procedures. If you have seen recent papers, again, last 6, 7, 8, substantive procedures have changed in AA paper. Now we don't get those assertion-based rote-learn procedures. 3 years, 4 years ago, students used to learn procedures from BPP book, and they were so happy that examiner will ask me a procedure on fixed asset or receivable or creditors and just produce the book knowledge. No more the case. You know that examiner is giving you shorter cases now in substantive procedure. Even in the mock exam for June 23, there were so many shorter scenarios given for substantive procedures, asking for share capital for the scenario given. Examiner might give you a short scenario for property, plant, and equipment, and for that scenario, might ask you recommend substantive procedures, 4 marks. Examiner might give you a short scenario for insurance claim in the scenario, just like the mock exam, and can ask you make 5 procedures on insurance claim. Where is the clue? No rote learnings, right? The procedure is in the case. Read the case, see what is happening, and what will the auditor do? There is some information given about insurance claim. There is some information given about a purchase of a new asset. There is some information given about the issuance of a share capital. You need to see what is actually happening in the case and how would the auditor verify it. Will the auditor discuss it? Will the auditor review it? Will the auditor recalculate it? Will the auditor take a representation letter? Will the auditor review the board minutes? What will the auditor do? You know, there are multiple ways to attack one thing. So your procedures are case-oriented. And I always tell my students, if you have taken my regular classes, you can see the last bullet on the screen, CASP, C-A-S-P. That's a mnemonic which I use. And I believe this is so very important in recent attempts of AA paper. And even I teach the AAA paper, it's so relevant for that as well. C is case specific. Examiner is giving you shorter cases and asking you 4 to 5 marks of procedure. So your procedure has to be from the case C. You're not writing a rote learn procedure on purchase of a new asset, because that purchase of a new asset has something special in the case study. You need to be around it. For example, in the June 23 mock exam, the management acquired a new asset, but they capitalized even the training cost. They even capitalized the sales tax. Now, that was wrong. You need to discuss with management the rectification of the sales tax, the rectification of the training cost, and telling management that training cost is an expense. It should not be capitalized. So that's where you need to be case specific. Rather than just learning the journal procedures from the textbook on property, plant, and equipment, which is of no use in recent years of AA paper. C, case specific action. A procedure has to start with an action. What is the auditor doing? Review the board minutes, and you continue. Review is an action. Recalculate the depreciation expense or recalculate the finance charge. Recalculate is an action. Discuss with finance director, discuss with human resource management. So these are actions, right? Source, S. Review the board minutes. What is the source? Board minutes. Discuss with management. Management is the source. Discuss with finance director. Finance director is the source. Recalculate the depreciation expense. What is depreciation expense? Source. Source means subject matter. Subject matter. And P is the purpose. Review the board minutes. Why? To confirm the authorization of the property, plant, and equipment, for example. Recalculate the depreciation expense to confirm its accurate purpose. Discuss with finance director to identify the reasons why sales have increased over the last year, for example. Every procedure should have a purpose. So if you are extracting your procedures from the case given, you're digging them out from it, as guided in my regular classes and in my webinars, my students take from me the paid versions. You know that, but you can also understand it very easily. It's C, case, A, action, S, source, subject matter, P, purpose. And if all these 4 attributes are available, you're getting 1 mark. No one can take that 1 mark from you. So look at the recent papers on substantive procedures. Look at the recent trends on substantive procedures. There are no more rote learn substantive procedures at all. So do the recent 5-6 papers and you will realize it. And read the examiner reports, examiner criticism, that what students do wrong with the procedures. And the last critical area in section B is audit report. We know examiner do test your knowledge around audit report. You should be very clear with the types of opinion, when to give qualified, when to give adverse, when to give disclaimers. Mostly the scenarios in AA is around qualified or unqualified maximum. Either something is material or immaterial. We rarely see pervasive grounds in AA paper. Be clear with the use of CAM. Examiner at times test your knowledge on CAMs, that what is included in CAM, or what explains some benefits of CAMs, something like that. So you should know when CAM is used or what are examples of CAM. Be clear when emphasis of a meta paragraph comes in, when to use it, what are conditions of emphasis of a meta paragraph, so you can rightly pick it out from a case study. Be clear with auditor responsibility for other information. Examiner might ask you, discuss what is auditor responsibility for other information. And if there is any discrepancy in other information, like the chairman statement, like the director report, how would that be reflected? You know, there is another information paragraph for it. Be clear with MURGC that if there is a material uncertainty relating to going concern and that is adequately disclosed in the notes to the financial statement, you do add MURGC paragraph in the audit report. So you should be clear with the rules. We know in audit report, there are so many rules. And every rule has conditions. The conditions are followed in the scenario, and you will issue the paragraph. You will issue the opinion. And be clear with other meta paragraph. For example, there is a change of auditor. The change of auditor is reflected that last year audit was done by another auditor. So you give reference to the previous auditor. in the case of the change of the auditor in the other meta paragraph. So knowledge of reporting, knowledge of rules will really help you in performing good in an audit report question. So I've given you deep insights into section B core areas. Again, reinforcing, read examiner reports, read examiner criticism of the last 3 exam sittings would be really, really important for you. So you are not making the same mistakes in reporting, substantive procedures, in internal controls, in audit risk and responses. So try to excel in section B. Try to aim at getting 45 plus out of 70. Section A, you have 58 minutes. Try to invest on it. Don't be in a hurry. Do your best. There's nothing difficult in AA. It's the student wrong decision makings. It's the student hurry in the exam. It's a student inappropriate approach, inappropriate behavior. It's a student getting nervous, stressed out in the very first 15, 20 minutes and spoiling your exam settings. The low pass rates is because of students' inappropriate decision makings, bad behaviors, not understanding things rightly, not even reading examiner reports. I think students are more to blame here, right, for the low pass rates, because you are not making a script which can impress the marker. When the marker and the examiner is telling you the issues in the examiner report, which you are least bothered to read about, then what will happen? If you read it in the next 7 days, you will find a value addition and you will say, oh, I'm amazed. I've never read this before, but I'm amazed about the weaknesses and I'm doing the same weaknesses in my answers. At least you can overcome them in the real exam, which is a week later. So I wish you all the very best of luck for your upcoming AA exams. This is your tutor, Kashif Kamran, signing off from the AA exam tips session. Take care, goodbye, and Allah Hafiz.